World Insight coming to you live from Beijing on CCTV News. I'm your host, Tian Wei. On today's program, Russia and Turkish deputy prime ministers met Tuesday to pave the way for talks between the two countries' leaders. As Ankara's responses to the recent attempt coup damage relations with both EU and the US, could closer ties with Moscow really benefit Turkey? And Japan was left reeling on Monday after 19 disabled people died in a knife attack at a residential care home in the country's deadliest mass killing in years. But what does the incident say about the health of the Japanese society as a whole? We start today's show with Turkish-Russia ties, which saw a big step forward this week. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Mr. Arkady Dvorkovich and also his Turkish counterpart, Mr. Simsek, met in Moscow on Tuesday. This was the first ministerial-level visit by the Turkish officials after Ankara's recent apology for the downing of a Russian warplane last November. The two nations are now willing to restore relations in trade and economy. August may witness a breakthrough, some say, in this, as the Turkish president will soon visit Moscow.
As soon as possible and at an accelerated pace. That's what Turkey says about normalizing relations with Russia. Turkey's Deputy Prime Minister Mehmet Simsek made the announcement after meeting his Russian counterpart Arkady Dvorkovich in Moscow. The biggest goal of the visit, restarting economic cooperation. A decision has been taken to continue work on the Turkstream natural gas pipeline, as well as Turkey's Akuyu nuclear power plant. Turkstream would bring gas from Russia to Turkey. Ankara suspended the project after relations with Moscow deteriorated following Turkey's downing of a Russian warplane. Russia retaliated with a ban on charter flights that harmed tourism. It also imposed sanctions on some Turkish food, which dealt a blow to the Turkish economy. Bilateral trade fell by just over 57% in the first months of 2016 compared with the previous year. Tourism also suffered, with a 92% decline in Russian visitors. Overall arrivals fell by 35% in May compared to 2015. While economic interests are believed to have drawn the two countries closer, geopolitics might be another factor. Erdogan has drawn strong criticism from European allies for a sweeping crackdown on tens of thousands of alleged opponents following the failed coup. Turkey's deal with the European Union to stop migration westward is also under strain. But Turkey has heaped praise on Russia for its support since the coup crisis erupted on July 15th. President Erdogan will visit Russia on August 9th for his first meeting with Vladimir Putin since the two countries agreed to restore ties. Whatever agreements will be reached during the meeting, the rapprochement may even lead to a political realignment in the region.
And for more on the issue between Russia and Turkey, we're joined here in the Beijing studio, Mr. Cui Hongjian, who is the director of the Department of European Studies at the China Institute of International Studies. Welcome, sir. Also joining us in Tunis, we're having Mr. Bülent Alireza, who is a director and senior associate with the Turkey Project at the Center for Strategic and International Studies based in the United States. Meanwhile, coming to Moscow with us, Mr. Pavel Felgenhauer, Russian defense analyst. Welcome to the three of you, gentlemen. First of all, may I have your opinion, Mr. Alireza? Is there going to be a U-turn for the relations between Russia and Turkey when the two heads of state meet early August?
Well, your reporter made a very good report about the prospects for rapprochement, but the one thing that he did not mention was Syria. The reason that Turkey and Russia have difficulties with each other is because of Syria. The reason that the Russian warplane was shot was because of Syria. The plane was shot because of Syria. Frankly, when they sit down, they will have to discuss how they can bridge their differences over Syria. Russia has been backing President Assad and his army against the opposition, and Turkey has been backing the opposition for 4 years against President Assad. So until they solve that problem, I think we have to put a question mark over the rapprochement.
Mr. Falkenhauer, is rather Syria going to be the key issue? As key an issue as that, is there any hope that the two sides will be able to resolve their differences?
Well, the two presidents have a very big plate on the will have a very big plate on the table in St. Petersburg. And so it's going to be in the economics, it's going to be Ukraine, it's going to be the gas project, which is basically a political project, the Turkish Stream, and the nuclear power station also is. And it's Syria, I mean, about Assad, but it's not just about Assad. For Turkey, maybe even it's more important is the Russian support and American support for the Kurds in northern Syria that Turkey sees as a big threat. So there, and of course, there is a desire by both sides to find some kind of quid pro quo. And there's also a big desire by both sides to send a strong message to the West that Turkey and Russia can work together and that the West should not put pressure on both Russia and Turkey. So,
I see.
There is a desire, but I don't know how really they'll be successful in sorting out these very big plate of problems.
Well, as long as there's a desire, there can be things that can be worked out. But how strong is the desire, Mr. Cui? I mean, of course, if it's convenient, everybody wants to have good relations with one another. But if it is causing a lot of trouble to create this convenience, well, maybe both sides might not see eye to eye with one another.
Yeah, exactly. I think now it's for both two sides, I mean, Russia and Turkey, mostly they are from a kind of requirement from both sides to avoid the worst situation for each other. If we know now because of the incident happening last year, still there are some sanctions.
The Russian jet was shot down by
yeah.
the Turkish side. Of course, Turkish side say, well, it is a decision made by the pilot himself.
Yes, exactly. And also now, of course, Russia also was imposed a sanction by European Union and United States. So it's I think it's both difficult decisions for both countries, from economic development and also kind of a failure in foreign policy. So both countries, they do have a requirement to get together.
Right.
But now the question from you is how it's strong for the desire. So I think it depends on how it is judgment from both two countries. Say, if we work together, we can deal with some issue, we can get some more mutual benefits for that. Of course, I think mostly for Turkey, how could Turkey go back to a balance? It was broke by itself. Indeed.
What kind of balance are you talking
there will
about?
be a very, very ideal situation for Turkey if it could keep a balance between NATO, UK, NATO, EU, Russia, and itself. Of course, the precondition is Turkey could be able to be part of the quadrangle of this situation.
Right, there are quite a number of issues really on the plate, as Mr. Falkenhauer rightly and vividly put it, such a big plate. And yet, what could be the priority? Mr. Alireza, I really want you to shed some light on this. Let's just mention this list. Of course, there's a Syria issue. There's also the Kurdish issue. There's, of course, the NATO partnership or not, or closer to Russia or to NATO. There's as well the political issue inside Turkey, which is the political coup, and the immediate actions coming from the Erdogan government to arrest so many aroused the criticism coming from the West. And for Russia, of course, there's also the issue of oil and gas, the pipelines, the economy, not to mention its relationship with the West as well. But when you have a common quote-unquote enemy to work out, it does not necessarily mean that you're likely to shake hands with one another. At least not under all circumstances. Mr. Alireza.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the motivation on the Turkish side is there to make up with Russia. Clearly, there's also similar motivation on the Russian side. But you know, let us understand that in this case, the initiative is really coming from the Turkish side. At the end of June, Turkey apologized, President Erdogan apologized for the shooting down of that plane, and that set in motion some small steps on which Erdogan and Putin want to build on. Look, the coup is an important factor in this equation. Since the coup, there have been blames leveled at the United States that it was behind the coup. There have been tensions between Ankara and Washington, both about possible or alleged U.S. involvement in the plot, which the U.S. has denied, but also because the Turkish government has blamed, President Erdogan himself has blamed Fethullah Gülen, an Islamic cleric who's been based in the United States for a long time, whose extradition the Turkish government has demanded. So there are lots of tensions between Turkey and the United States, and clearly Turkey is reaching out to Russia to try and balance that. But I go to the point that I originally made. Until and unless there is an agreement on how to solve the differences between them, which are 180 degrees apart on Syria, on top of which we could add the Syrian Kurdish forces that both the United States and Russia have been supporting and Turkey has been opposing, right. We have to put a question mark over the limits of the rapprochement.
All right. There are a lot of things. You said it's 180 degrees difference when it comes to opinions on many big issues, while Mr. Felgenhauer put it also that there is a big plate, to say it the most polite way. But the reason why Turkey and Russia would have this opportunity to talk to one another really has a lot to do with how one another see each other's positions and status in the region. For example, Turkey, its geopolitical significance to both Russia and the EU has been long recognized by both sides. The country is located at the southeastern border of the economic bloc. For Russia, Turkey is on the path of its Black Sea fleet and needs to enter the Mediterranean. Turkey is now accepting a large number of Syrian refugees and is on the front line of fighting ISIL, just to say the list of its significance. But how significant really, Mr. Felgenhauer, to Russia, Turkey is at this moment? Before I let you answer, may I just brief our audience a little bit something I have learned by doing research. Turkey and Russia has had wars one after another for 4 centuries, and there have long been differences between the two countries. So when you look at the temporary circumstances vis-a-vis geopolitical trend, Mr. Felgenhauer, how important really is Turkey for Russia?
Well, it has been always important, and now even more so. When Russia went in militarily last year into Syria, the understanding was that Turkey is going to be a good partner, a strategic partner in that endeavor, the same as, say, Israel. And that Russia could work with Turkey, and there had been a long friendly relationship personal between Erdogan and Putin, and Erdogan was here in Moscow in 15, inaugurating a very big mosque, and everything seems good, and then everything went real bad after the Turks shot down our bomber. And now there's a second attempt to restart that partnership. If Turkey is ready to work with Russia on what Russia believes is important for the Middle East and creating a kind of stabilizing the Middle East and creating a big network of partnership under big Russian auspices, then Russia is going to give Turkey many things that Turkey wants. But right now, no one in Moscow is really believes for sure that there will be a breakthrough in St. Petersburg. The Russian official TV is right now reporting situation in Turkey kind of very balanced. The Russian official TV is talking about repression, people being arrested. So that means right now there is no real big agreement. So that's what the two big leaders can put together in these two countries that are led by very strong authoritarian leaders. They can work it out. Yes or no? It's going to be a very important summit.
It is a very important summit. Given what the three of you have provided to our audience, it is really a mixed picture, very complicated picture. If we want to at least the two players, if they want to, start with something. What can they start with? Mr. Ali Reza, I'd like to comment first before I go to Mr. Cui in Beijing. Mr. Ali Reza, what can the two sides work out together? Is the gas and oil pipeline can be a great start, or can there be more negotiations about the pilot and also the planes? Or is there going to be a common enemy, and therefore the two sides, no matter under what circumstances, they're going to hold hands? Where to start?
Well, the gas pipeline project is a long-term project. Turkey and Russia have been cooperating on energy for many years. There is the Blue Stream pipeline underneath the Black Sea that's been bringing gas, 16 billion cubic meters a year. Then there is the overland pipeline that extends all the way back to the 1980s that brings another 14 billion cubic meters. And the new pipeline that's planned is designed to bring gas to Turkey and then on to the EU. Now, the fact that they are thinking about reviving that is important, but it's long-term. Much more important for Turkey is the short-term economic relationship, Russia giving permission to tourists to come to Turkey again. This has been a disastrous tourist season in Turkey, not least because the Russians have not been coming. Now, if Russia shows understanding over what Turkey is doing after the coup and takes advantage of the coolness between Turkey and the United States, and let us remember that the reason that Turkey is in NATO is because both the US and Turkey perceived the Soviet Union in the 1950s, early 1950s, as a threat. Now, Turkey's still in NATO. Turkey still has an alliance with the United States, but it's strained. So Russia will take advantage of it at the geopolitical level. And if they can find a common understanding on Syria, on the Middle East, on the threat of the jihadis, and let's remember that Russia has been accusing Turkey of allowing jihadis from the Caucasus, from Russia as well, to enter into Syria. So it is not going to be easy, even when it comes to defining the threats, defining the common interests, and then finding a way of dealing with them with respect to the Middle East.
Well, what Mr. Ali Reza has been talking about are extremely important and yet challenging tasks, I have to say, Mr. Cui.
Yes, exactly. This, so far, it's at a very, very beginning stage for this approach or reconcile between two countries. So easily, it would be very, very fragile stage. So for both two countries, the easy way should be going to some easier part during the relations.
What is the easy part that you would identify?
Bilateral relations.
Yeah, what kind of bilateral relations?
The first step should be lifted sanction from the Russian side on Turkey side. Secondly, how could the economic and energy cooperation, because especially for the energy cooperation, as we know, even during the crisis between two countries, there is not no cancel for any kind of cooperation in nuclear plant or for the energy pipeline, because as we know, the energy pipeline between Russia and Turkey is a very, very strategic project for Russia. And then, of course, so far, those two countries will not touch those difficult part for the relations, especially in Syria, in Kurdish or some other issue, because in this foreign policy issue, those two countries is difficult to avoid some impact from other players, including United States, NATO, and the European Union.
But on the other hand, these two players seem to have very fundamental differences when it comes to these areas. So for example, the attitude toward Syria, they're exactly on two opposite sides. And also the role of Turkey in NATO. You cannot expect Turkey to leave NATO at all. I mean, it is still a security guarantee over there throughout history. For Russia, it's the same. It has its own strategic interest. So, Mr. Falkenhauer, may I come back to you and ask you, will temporary interest be able to put these two countries together? How sustainable will that together, if there were any, be for these two countries? After all, as we mentioned by all of you, strategically, the two countries have never been together. And also strategically throughout history, the two countries have never been together.
Well, both countries have a lot to offer each other, that's sure. And there's, of course, not actually on top of what has been already mentioned today, there's also the problem of the Transcaucasus of Azerbaijan and Armenia, and Turkish military presence in Azerbaijan that Russia also doesn't like at all. So they'll have to put down a map of the region on the table and figure out who gets what. I mean, it should be a kind of a real tit for tat or quid pro quo figuring out of a lot of things. Because without that, they won't get far at all.
Right.
They can do something, I mean, on tourists, but that's all.
Right.
There should be really a big figuring out of differences. Are they ready for that or not? They can be. Actually, they can be.
All right.
They have the capability to achieve that.
I can almost tell this is mind-boggling issue because Mr. Felgenhauer seemed already run out of words saying there are many, many, many issues out there. Before we go, one final question for the three of you, and I think it's also important. Strongman politics are being played out both inside Russia and more in Turkey as well with Mr. Erdogan. Will a political style of these two leaders be able to make them ever closer to one another against those who do not subscribe to these kind of politics? Very briefly from you, Mr. Felgenhauer, if I could give you 30 seconds, sir.
I believe, yes, they know each other very well. Of course, there has been a lot of bad blood after this shooting down of the Russian plane, and Putin said that it was a stab in the back. But they're ready right now, apparently, to mend fences.
Okay, Mr. Cui?
Yes.
Strongman politics, will that bring them together?
It's difficult, exactly, because even we know in history, this relations between Turkey and Russia was called competitive partnership. Also, we know now this kind of partnership with competitiveness will be exaggerated, especially the part of competitiveness will be enlarged by personality from both two presidents.
All right, cooperation, competition depends on who is there sitting in the chair, to what proportion. And Mr. Alireza, what about your guess or sense?
Well, personal relations are important, but also geopolitical differences are geopolitical differences. There is a limit to how far the two men who do know each other and have had good relationship in the past can actually overcome those geopolitical differences. I remain skeptical that they will be able to do so, at least in one meeting. Maybe this will usher in a series of meetings and they could deal with them, but then Turkey will have to somehow balance that with its primary relationship with the United States as well.
Right.
So we'll see where it goes.
Once again, so much on the plate, quoting your words. Dr. Bulent Alireza, Mr. Pavel Felgenhauer, and Mr. Cui Hongjian. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us and shedding some light on one of the very important bilateral relations between Turkey and Russia. Really appreciate it. Stay with us here on World Insight. We got our final segment coming right up. The deadliest mass killing ever in Japan took place on Monday when 19 disabled care home residents were knifed to death by a former employee. What does the tragic incident reveal about the problems in modern Japanese society and what to make of the serious attacks happening around the world over the past few weeks? We'll talk about that after this. Welcome back. You're watching World Insight, coming to you live from Beijing on CCTV News. News of deadly attacks have recently seemed to continuously flow in from all corners of the globe. Japan, one of the world's safest countries supposed to be, just suffered its deadliest mass killing in decades. A young man killed 19 people in a knife attack at a care facility in a town near Tokyo on Monday. The suspect previously claimed that he wanted to kill disabled people. What does this brutal killing say about the Japanese society, and what to make of the series of killing and hurting incidents from around the world? Before our discussion, let's take a look at this.
Japan's worst mass killing in decades. 19 people have been killed in a knife attack at a care center in Sagamihara outside Tokyo. Another 25 people were wounded, 20 of them seriously. The suspect has been named as 26-year-old Satoshi Uematsu. He had been an employee of the facility for people with mental disabilities until February this year. After the attack, he drove to a local police station and confessed to the crime.
This is not a case of a reactionary crime, where the suspect blew up and took a knife or gun. He went in the dark of the night, opened one door at a time, and stabbed the sleeping people one at a time. I just can't believe the cruelty of this crime. We need to find ways that this never happens again.
The suspect reportedly said he wanted people with disabilities to disappear. His goal is a world in which the severely disabled can be euthanized. Experts say that taking care of disabled people is stressful work, which is usually underpaid and understaffed. Hatred grows easily in these conditions. But mass attacks like this are extremely rare in Japan. The brutal killings have shocked Japanese society.
It's extremely sad. I worked there for quite some time. It's so sad that these innocent people were the victims.
Back in February, Uematsu sent letters to politicians in which he threatened to kill hundreds of disabled people during a night shift. After that, he was involuntarily committed to hospital. He was kept for almost 2 weeks before being released in March.
The bloody attack is a major incident, and I'm really startled at it. I heard the man had once threatened attacks on disabled people. It is hard to say who should assume responsibility. Why hadn't we discovered his plans earlier and prevented the tragedy from happening?
With increasing threats to public security worldwide, warning signs of crimes shouldn't be ignored. How to secure public safety in these troubled times is a vital issue for politicians to consider.
And for more on this, we're joined here in our Beijing studio, Mr. Yang Mingjie, who is the Vice President of the China Institute of Contemporary International Relations, and also Mr. Victor Gao, who is Director of China National Association of International Studies. Welcome to both of you. Meanwhile, joining us on the phone, we're also having from Chiang Mai in Thailand, Mr. Yoichi Shimatsu, who is the former editor of Japan Times. Welcome as well. Mr. Shimatsu, may I begin by asking you the question, what do you make as a long-time and seasoned journalist of this deadliest attack in Japan for decades? 19 people, after all, died.
Right, yes. I covered the Tokyo subway gaffing by the Omshin Rikyo cult back in 1995, 20 years ago. There are some similarities, some differences, but what I will say is that in both cases, and especially this case, the news coverage has been terrible. There hasn't really been a lot of investigative reporting. He delivered this letter, apparently in February, to the highest-ranking Liberal Democratic Party member in the Parliament, the Speaker of the House, okay, Mr. Oshima. So it's not like there wasn't a warning. He said, and also he did this once again in July. So he's warned some of the top officials in the Parliament of Japan twice, and he was put in hospital. He was never jailed. There was never a thorough investigation. So and then the news coverage, news coverage tried to present this as a mass murder, that he was a maniac, and this seems to be exonerating the ruling party of responsibility for not responding to him, and also for their social policies. He went to them, obviously, because he thought that these people were not very well treated. There was no, they're put basically on life support.
Of course.
They're not treated very well, and so therefore, he saw this as an act of mercy.
But Mr. Shimatsu, may I follow up by asking you, if you can briefly answer, there has been different opinions. In fact, the one who committed this crime was suggesting this is, quote unquote, as he said, the mercy killings. However, many others see it as massive killings. So these are very different concepts, I have to say, to begin with. And of course, the one who commit this crime would love to in a way, lessen the degrees of what he did. So how much should you follow what the criminal said, and how much should you follow what others consider the nature of the incident? I think it's a very interesting question, an important question. Very briefly from you, Mr. Shimatsu.
Yes, of course, people and relatives, people who, friends of people who were committed to the institution in Sagami-Hauer, they're going to be shocked. They're going to be disapproving. But what the background we've got to understand is the absolute dismal care of disabled people in Japan. It's a very rich society, but we're one of the worst in treating people who are confined to these institutions. The workers are tremendously overburdened, underpaid.
Right.
So we've had this terrible situation of neglect, of governmental neglect by the health ministry, social welfare ministry. And obviously we see this government very happy to spend money to help the stock market, to help the banks, to help the major corporations, but to help the people of Japan, not a penny. And we can see this in Fukushima. The more than 100,000 people, more than 5 years after Fukushima disaster, who still live in temporary homes, are being pushed back into radioactive areas. This government doesn't care about people.
Mr. Shimatsu, I know you have a lot of complaints about many of the things happened over the years, but before you go, very briefly, once again from you, what do you think? Is there a possibility for change, as you said, to some of the social problem you mentioned earlier?
Well, the killer, this assailant's problems, I think it reflects this hopelessness, the inability of the electorate to bring about change despite all these problems, the voicelessness of the Japanese people, the censorship of the media. This issue, this incident, sort of reflects all of these problems of Japan, of a hopeless condition in which change becomes impossible. And people are basically cannibalizing each other. There's a huge suicide rate, and I think there's this general hopelessness ending in the death of a lot of people, the premature death of a lot of people, because they can't get the care that they need.
Mr. Yoichi Shimatsu from the Japan Times, former editor of the newspaper. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us. And now let's come back to our studio discussion. You can tell Mr. Shimatsu is becoming very passionate when he was talking, and emotional in a way, when he's talking about all of these social problems happening in his country. At this moment, investigations are still going on. We would not say there has been any final conclusion, but what do you make, Mr. Yang, from your perspective? You are an anti-terror expert from China. This is not the only incident that we have witnessed over the past few days. This is one of it, even though their natures are different, but certainly arouse a lot of alert from the public.
I think maybe first I want to say it can be regarded as a demonstration effect of terror in the world. I don't want to regard that Japanese accident as a terror attack, but it has some demonstration for the criminals who want to make attack because of the news report about the terror attack in the world. And for the Japanese accident, I have some questions. The first is, I don't really believe was the response from the Japanese law enforcement policemen to the accident, because one person killed almost 20 people and wounded 25 people just in one side. There's no any emergency response for that. So I don't think it's the same as the report by Japanese media about their policemen.
So that is at least one big question mark over there regarding this. What do you think, Mr. Gao?
Well, first of all, I think this massive mass killing in Japan is shocking and is unprecedented. It's the largest scale mass killing ever since the end of the Second World War for 71 years. Japan in general is a country of peace and stability. I was in Kyoto and Osaka just recently, and I can be a witness to the, generally speaking, very good social order in Japan. However, this incident is very serious in the sense that it's well calculated, it's well planned, and warnings have been given to the authorities way beforehand, and the authorities should have had time to get prepared against the occurrence of this. But everything failed, and the killer managed to kill so many people in one incident, and it broke the record in Japan, and it really, sensationalized many things. As far as this incident is concerned.
We don't want to go political, but at least some facts has to be shared with our audience. First of all, the Japanese economy over the past few years has not been doing very well, even though Abenomics seemed to work for some short period of time, but eventually those arrows have not revived the economy. Secondly, we've seen a lot of political change going to the right, as they say, in Japan, and also revision of the constitution. All of these become a social debate and arouse a lot of differences among different social groups. So how much should we consider this incident with these larger background, or these are too big a background to be related to this specific incident, Mr. Yang?
For me, I think maybe some people are talking about the Abe economic have made some impact for the recovery of Japanese economic development. But at least for Abe's social policy, I don't think it makes some achievement. And because according to some data report that the poverty population is increasing in recent years. Another thing is that how could Japanese government pay much attention on the person who makes the attack? They use the word the weakened side of the society. Because some people, we know that Japanese have a tradition of the so-called otaku, it's indoors men or indoors boys. They live isolated from the society. But there's no anything for size or maybe some social measure for them.
For integration.
For the integration. So that's what can Abe's government do for its people, not only for the foreign affairs, for some data of economic recovery, something like that.
Those are certainly legitimate questions coming from outside Japan. But having said that, though, it is not the only incident we have witnessed over the past few days. In fact, there has been a series of the mass casualty attacks frequently been taking place over the past few weeks. Take a look at this. France barely recovered from the killings of the Bastille Day celebration in Nice. Then another attack took place Tuesday, where an elderly priest was murdered at a church in northern France. Germany, meanwhile, another country also working hard to address fears after 4 violent attacks in less than a week. In the latest of the 4 incidents, a Syrian immigrant detonated a bomb on Sunday, killing himself and injuring 15 others. We have noticed that some of the details of these incidents have not necessarily been given out through the media or by the public officials. On the one hand, it's understandable because some details might not just be right for the society to create harmony. However, on the other hand, people do need to have more access to information in order to understand what exactly is the nature of these attacks in order to protect themselves, Mr. Gao.
Definitely. I think terrorism and extremism are on the rise, and ISIS is a major factor to be dealt with on the global stage, and Europe is falling more and more into this deterioration of tension as far as terrorism is concerned. But this incident in Japan is very unprecedented. We know for sure over the decades there is a lot of pent-up pressure in Japan. However, most of these pressure points in Japan so far did not actually result in extreme violence like this. And therefore, I think we need to really carefully study the situation to come up with a firm conclusion as to why it happened, whether it's a sign of a new wave of bad things which may happen in Japan in the coming years and decades.
This is something that we are extremely concerned about in Northeast Asia, because what we've seen, including earlier, our footages are mainly coming from European countries as a result of the Syrian crisis. And people here are extremely concerned, Mr. Yang, whether there is likely to be a further spread of the fear and of extreme actions coming from or based on top of social inequality or instability, even though it was not necessarily as it is in Europe, but still it has its own roots and possibly likely to be more incidents about that, Mr. Yang?
First, I want to say that it's not only happening in European countries, because in recent days we focus on European countries' terrorism attack, but there are some more attacks happening in other countries, in Somalia or in even other countries. Right. So for me, I think terrorism can be regarded as one result of chaos of social transition. The number of casualties in European countries of terrorist attack can be compared with the beginning of 1970s, because 1970s is as European countries is enter a transition of society. There, the terrorism is increasing, but this time the trend is very dangerous because it's decreasing, it's increasing. But what can we do to prevent it further? I think that European politicians, there are some internal debate on that issues. The danger is that the two dangerous trends. One is to make some ignore the fact of the increasing of terrorism attack. They don't think terrorism attack is a result of society transition. They don't so care about it. They're thinking it is from ISIL or some other groups. Another dangerous trend is that some people thinking they want to make some more tough policy for migrants, and maybe they want to show their reserved something like that. That two dangerous trends, I don't think it will have some impact on that issues.
Well, we're running out of time for this very important discussion, but I'm sure we'll have further opportunities for further analysis on that. Thank you so much, Mr. Yang Mingjie, and also Victor Gao for being with us. Thank you. That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of a program, visit our website. Just type in World Insights CCTV News into your search engine. You will be able to find us, or you can also check out our YouTube channel. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone at the World Insight team, thanks for watching. And tune in again tomorrow for more insights from across China and around the world. Good night.